In this video, I'm going to show you every single Barbarian Paragon board using the Tears of Blood, the unique glyph from the Abattoir Azir, to see which board yields the highest power and what you can expect when you max out this all-new glyph. What's going on, guys? I genuinely want to know which boards are going to be the best for each class when the Abattoir Azir launches, if you've got a perfectly leveled 200 Tears of Blood unique glyph, right? That's a lot of time spent, that's a lot of sigil powder spent, so where are you going to get the most bang for your buck? What is the best board for you to get the highest multiplicative damage using this glyph? I'd previously made a rogue video, so I know how that class looks, but in this one, we're going to check out the Barbarian. So without further ado, let's delve into the starting board and work our way through it. In the starting board, with every node selected, you're going to receive a benefit of 3,636.1% increased multiplicative damage, an additional 49.8% physical damage, 50 strength, and 498 armor. The starting board has two rare nodes, Raw Power and Iron Strength. Raw Power will yield 69.8% physical damage and 35 strength when you have the bonus also achieved of 160 dexterity, and Iron Strength will give you 698 armor with an additional 35 strength if you've hit the willpower requirement on the starting board. Next up is going to be the Hemorrhage board. The Hemorrhage board, when fully maxed out, will yield 3,880.9% increased multiplicative damage. It'll also give you 49.8% physical damage over time, with 50 additional strength and 19.9% damage reduction from bleeding enemies. The two rare nodes on the Hemorrhage board are Butcher and Grit. Butcher is going to provide you with 69.8% increased damage over time, physical damage over time, and 35 strength, while Grit will give you 27.9% damage reduction from bleeding enemies and 35 strength. Next up is the Decimator board. When fully maxed out, you can appreciate 4,125.7% increased multiplicative damage, 49.8% vulnerable damage increase with 50 strength, and finally 19.9% damage reduction from vulnerable enemies. The Decimator board has two rare nodes, Demolish and Arrogance, and Demolish will provide you with 69.8% vulnerable damage and an additional 35 strength, where Arrogance will give you 27.9% damage reduction from vulnerable enemies and 35 strength. When I bring up the Carnage board and I select all the nodes available, I receive 4,370.5% increased multiplicative damage. I also get 49.8% damage while berserking, an additional 50 strength, and 22.4% damage reduction from close enemies. The two rare nodes on the Carnage board are Fierce and Brash. Fierce will provide 69.8% damage while berserking, with 35 strength, and the Brash rare node will give you 31.4% increased damage reduction from close enemies, and another 35 strength. Blood Rage, when all nodes are selected, will give you 4,207.3% increased multiplicative damage. It'll give you an additional 19.9% damage reduction from bleeding enemies, 50 strength, and 49.8% damage to bleeding enemies. The two rare nodes on the Blood Rage board are Grit and Revel. Grit will give you 27.9% damage reduction from bleeding enemies and 35 strength, while Revel provides 69.8% damage to bleeding enemies and an additional 35 strength. The Bonebreaker board, when fully optimized, gives you 4,044.1% increased multiplicative damage, 224.1% overpower damage, an additional 50 strength, and 24.9% damage reduction while healthy. The two rare nodes on the Bonebreaker board are Brutality and Vigor. Brutality will provide you with 314.1% increased overpower damage and 35 strength, while Vigor will give you 34.9% damage reduction while healthy and an additional 35 strength. Next up is the Flawless Technique board, granting 3,962.5% increased multiplicative damage, an additional 74.7% critical strike damage with one-handed weapons, 50 strength, and finally 22.4% damage reduction from close enemies. Now, the two rare nodes on this board are Heavy Blows and Brash. Heavy Blows will grant 104.7% critical strike damage with one-handed weapons and 35 strength, while Brash rare node will give you 31.4% damage reduction from close enemies and 35 strength, assuming you reach the bonus from all the additional requirements. In this case, it's willpower. Moving on to the Warbringer board, when fully maxed out, it'll provide 3,717.7% increased multiplicative damage with an additional 49.8% physical damage, 50 strength, and finally 14.9 resistance to all elements. The two rare nodes on the Warbringer board are Raw Power and Conditioned. Raw Power will give you 69.8% additional physical damage and 35 strength, while Conditioned will give you 20.9 resistance to all elements and 35 strength. And last but not least, I present to you the Weapons Master board. When fully maxed out, you get to enjoy 3,880.9% increased multiplicative damage, again 49.8% physical damage, 50 strength, and 498 armor. The Weapons Master has 2 rare nodes, one being Raw Power, the other Iron Strength. Raw Power will give you 69.8% physical damage and 35 strength, whereas Iron Strength will give you 698 armor and an additional 35 strength. Okay, so now that we know how all of the boards get to receive this maxed out Tears of Blood glyph on them and what their percent increase multiplicative damage is, let's go ahead and take a look at the rankings to see how they fall in order of best to worst performing multiplicative damage. From the top, Carnage is first place, Blood Rage is second, Decimator is going to be third, Bonebreaker is going to be number 4, Flawless Technique comes in at 5th, Hemorrhage and Weapons Master are shared or tied for 6th and 7th, where Warbringer will be the 8th best board you can use, and then 9th place, the last board, is the starting board. Big surprise, size matters, right? That board's quite small and doesn't really yield all that much in terms of node application to the Tears of Blood benefit for multiplicative damage. So all in all, I can't tell you what's going to be the best board for you just now, but now you have some information you can use as a barbarian to deal incredible increased damage on those massive hits that you're already doing. I do got to say, I think the Abattoir of Zir leading class, in my opinion, is going to be the Barbarian, especially if you're like the Immortal Barb or Hoda build, Hammer of the Ancients build. You guys are like the front runners for us, so please, for the love of Christ, clear that 25 for us, and let's see how the job gets handled, right? But for me to you guys, this is it. I want to make one for each class, so I'm working against the clock here again. The Abattoir of Zir will drop off this glyph for everybody as of December 5th, so I'm going to keep making out these videos. I'm going to keep cranking out the content for you. We've got a bunch of other classes to go, but so far, at 4,370.5% increase multiplicative, I've already done the Rogue. This is the Barb. It is the highest performing Tears of Blood level 200 glyph I've seen thus far. Thank you guys for giving me a chance to make this video and connect with you guys today. Hope your week goes very well. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Adios.